Welcome to Soulful Practices Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Holling-Brooks, and over the past 20 years, I have been on a journey of healing and awakening. I'm also a coach and practitioner for clients on their journey of unbridling their true self. The number one question I'm asked is, what meditation or practice will help me reach my goals? While there is no one meditation or secret mantra that will unlock our own awakening, there is a doorway that will lead us there. And that's the doorway of learning and cultivating the skills of self-reflection and contemplation. Each episode of this podcast offers you pocket teachings and practices that you can implement right away to help you courageously connect with living your authentic soul-led life. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 32 of Soulful Practices. I am your host, Michelle Holling-Brooks, and I am super excited to bring you this particular episode because it's like time oriented, but I want you to know that you can bring in the practice that I share in this episode in anywhere because it's associated with the equinox energy. So I love being able to renew my practices around different astrological psychic weather that is kind of setting that undertone of what energies are up and available and active for us right now, and how can we harness those, work with them, ride with those surfs and waves of that psychic weather versus kind of feel like we're getting tumbled around by it. And the equinoxes I absolutely love because I have so much earth energy in me. And so the earth energy is part of the traditional five elements model of traditional Chinese medicine. And the five elements model is that each element or rhythm is associated with different times of the year. And so for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're moving out of winter and into wood energy. And for those in the Southern Hemisphere, you are moving out of summer energy and into fall, into autumn, or into metal energy. So we're moving from these basic elements of water or fire. And fire is like that up and out and moving and dancing and sharing and connecting and allowing ourselves to really be in the joy of our creation cycle, right? Like it's when the fruit is starting to come forward and we're starting to experience that expansion of what we've kind of put into motion is the energy of that. And it can be super exciting and connective and like ideas are forming. And as you move into the fall for the Southern Hemisphere, that is moving into that bittersweet energy of being able to really start to see the fruits of that quote creation cycle of that full year and to come together, to be in connection, to celebrate that year, to celebrate the connections that you've been able to make. And this also is not just a year. We have these like in a day, we have them even in a moment. So we move through these cycles all the time. But the different of the seasons is really bittersweet because it's also about letting go. Right? It's about moving out of all that connectivity and enjoyment and allowing ourselves to create and moving more into that energy that says, hey, we know this quote season is coming to an end. Something is going to be released. But from that releasing, we can allow ourselves to see that bigger picture, let go of the reins of the things we didn't get to do or the things we did do that we absolutely love and we don't want them to change. And can we let go? Can we exhale? Can we let the leaves kind of fall from the trees, so to speak, and allow ourselves to go inward? And so this fall energy for the Southern Hemisphere is really setting you up into saying, okay, it's time to enjoy, it's time to reminisce, but it's also time to start to let go. And so that's why the metal element is associated with grief and loss, because it is about that cycle that every beginning, water, has an ending, metal, right? And so that is the bittersweet energy you're moving into. In the Northern Hemisphere, moving from water to wood, that is that energy of moving from the stillness, that inspiration. The place of water is a holding. It allows us to begin to gather up ideas and be in the stillness of them. So instead of just moving, quick, it's like, no, let's really sift. Let's sort. What do we want to create? How do we want to create it? And it's supposed to be born from that place of stillness, from that place of pause, that place of really allowing inspiration, what wants to come forward, versus that habitual karmic wheel just churning us out, cause and effect based off of what? Based off of our past choices dictating our current choices. So the water element asks us to hold, to pause, to lean in to creativity, to experiencing what we might not have a point of reference for yet because it hasn't been created yet. And so it invites us to let go of form, soften, and so that form itself can come in from inspiration. So it's a very yin energy, but it creates the bones, the structure of what wants to be born, right? And so as we move out of the equinox and into the wood element in the northern hemisphere, we're going to be working with the driving energies that say it's time to create. It's time to start to chop wood, carry water, so to speak, and really start to move through the physical movement of then creating something thought into form, right? Of bringing something from that holding energy into movement. And so I like to think of, like, for a tree to be strong or for a plant to be strong or whatever it is, its roots have to grow down into what is it grounded in? What is it believing in? And then up into the heavens to get to the light so that it can break free and be seen and felt and heard and explored over in that fire energy, right? But this wood energy is about that process of building roots and reaching for that light, right? Of bringing that in. And so I thought it would be really fun in this equinox energy to bring in the earth element in a new and a different way than I've done it in the past. So you can go to my blogs and different videos, even within this channel, if you're on my YouTube channel, of where you can see I've worked with stomach and spleen energy, because those are the two meridians that are associated with the earth element. But the earth element is, in the original, if you really kind of sift through and go back, instead of it being in the elements where they're all kind of in a quasi circle around the outside with the control channel and the flow cycles that are in it, instead the earth element was in the middle of these four other main seasons or rhythms or elements of life, right? And the reason why the earth was in the middle is because it represents our life force energy. It also represents pauses, honoring the balance and the space in between the different cycles. So it's that space between a stimulus and a response, the space between a thought and a form. Where is that space? And that space, when I really feel in it, it lets us exhale. It lets us step into true choice. So instead of habitual responding and acting off of that old comic wheel, if we allow space to come in, if we allow a pause to come in of earth energy, what are we grounded in? What is the life force energy that we want to walk into the room with? What is the life force energy I want to create into form? What are the things that I want to experience in that next rhythm of life? Whether that be switching from work time to family time to recreation time, even work tasks within my work day, right? Like there's all these different moments where we're switching from one rhythm of something, one experience of something to another. And in between each of those moments, there is a space, right? So going back to one of the beautiful quotes that has been in this season by Viktor E. Frankl, and that was, in between a stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, that is where we have the power to create and to change, right? And how we respond to that space really matters. So this week, the quote that's going to come in to help us was one that came to me when I was on a retreat and I was in the middle of a bunch of stimulus and a bunch of response. And I kind of went out to ground myself and to presence myself and step into this earth energy. And there was a big, beautiful oak that was on the edge of like this pond that was at this retreat center. And so I went over to this oak and I just kind of sat down underneath its beautiful aura of the fall of its, branches over top of me against the trunk of the tree. And I was just trying to say, hey, can you help me find center again? Can you help me pause? I'm having a lot of stimulus, a lot of response happening, and I want to find me. I want to move back into the next part of this retreat from myself instead of from this place of reactivity, this place that was born of trauma responses, this place that was born of like what I should and shouldn't be doing, hands on hips, wagging fingers, it was a whole hot mess of things that were happening in there. And I sat down next to this tree. I started to breathe, and what was happening is I noticed that I had this like little, I call them bobbleheads because it makes it a little easier, but these protective mechanisms that was trying to talk to me, and it was saying, things like, this is the way it should be right now. Like if this retreat was being run this way, it would be this. If it was being run this way, it would be that, and it was making this list of shoulds and like where I should be and what I shouldn't be and what somebody else should be doing. And like it had this whole little, real long list that it was just like churning itself up. And then I felt this very steady rhythm start to come in. And I heard, live fully where you are planted. You have been planted here. You are here. Live fully here. And I realized it was that beautiful white oak rhythm, which is about protection, about being that sentinel. They're usually on the edge of the forest, right out in the middle of that field. And I used to always think of the white oak as a solitary, like a sentinel, that was before the forest, and it was alone, and it didn't have that much interaction because it wasn't in the thick and the heart of the forest with all the other beings. And so even that started to turn, and again it was like, no, I'm fully involved in the space that I'm in. I'm connected through my roots. Look up into the tree, and there were squirrels up there, there were birds, it was like you're viewing my being out further in distance as me being separate. But that is just your point of view. And it really challenged. I was not so happy to be quote unquote put in my place by this beautiful tree. But then I started to really feel the wisdom and the love and the compassion that it was bringing me to, right? Like I had these well-oiled paths that were in me that kept thinking like, this is my perception. I'm separate out. I'm the sentinel. I'm this, I'm that. I'm not connected in. There's this group over here that's, they're the inner circle. They're all in there together. And I was like, oh, this is my trauma. This is that wounded part of me that felt on the edges. This is that wounded part of me that felt like, she was in a group, but not in a group. Like I could sit at any table, in the lunchroom, quote unquote, in high school, but yet I never felt at home or really belonging in any of those. And while that might have been true, maybe that wasn't true. Maybe that was the groove of me not living where I was planted. And yeah, I did not live where I was planted because of my trauma history. It was like, no, I don't want to put down roots in this. I don't feel comfortable in me. I don't know this Michelle, this body, it was all so foreign to me. And it just felt so abusive and so out of whack that I didn't want to live where I was planted. In fact, if I really started to give myself grace and start to bring in that compassion, I realized that what I really had was resentment. I had a lot of resentment as to why I had had the trauma experiences in my past. Like, where did they come from? What was that doing? And all of that was keeping me from actually being able to show up in that moment. And so the beautiful quote from the white oak tree that I guess you can contribute to channel through Michelle, live fully where you are planted. The only way we can do that is if we're actually willing to pause and notice what is happening. It doesn't matter how I got to where I'm at, what room I'm sitting in, what experience or exchange that I'm having with somebody, what street I find myself walking down. None of that matters. What matters is that I'm there, right? And so I can fight it and I can like push on it and I can say I shouldn't have made this choice or this person shouldn't have done this or da 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 da. I can do all of that. But that just takes me further and further. It's like pulling up my roots, saying I will not live here. And if a tree does that, it topples. It cannot remain balanced. It cannot remain steady. It cannot live and thrive, right? And so as I sat there and this beautiful tree taught me, it kind of kept going. It's a huge long dialogue. But what I really came to was first, if I allowed myself to just honor the parts of me that were struggling, honor where they were coming from, to go through the to-do list of what I thought I should be doing or all that, like just bullet points, like expressive writing, get it down. So for me, I'm a big journaler, so I like to write down bullet points. It doesn't have, it's usually messy. It's like a mind mapping. It's all over the place. And I would write down like angry, upset, I don't know where, uneasy, shaky, so I just started to map the sensations. What was happening in the quote tree of me, right? In my body. And then I would put little question marks next to it, like, where's that coming from? Sometimes I had an answer to it, sometimes I didn't, right? And then at the bottom of the page, I would say, where have I been planted? What is the circumstance that I'm in right now? Right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't matter how I got there. Where have I been planted? And from that place, I started to be able to say, okay, now how do I want to be? Who do I want to be? Fun fact about me, I have dyslexia. And so I always reverse who and how until one day I realized that, oh my gosh, it's because they really are the same. How I show up shows myself and others who I am. And who I am can dictate how I show up. And so all of a sudden, the fact that I reversed all those letters all those times, and sometimes I would write who instead of how, and people would send it back to me. And even like now, as I still write, professionally now, and I have books and all this other stuff, write blogs, all these other contents, I still reverse them. And I said to my editor one day, I was like, hey, it's totally cool because you can put who or how in there at the same time because they both get you to the same place. She's like, Michelle, they're two totally different words. And I said, no, feel into the energy. She's like, yeah, but still English language wise, they're two different words. I was like, okay, yeah, but I don't follow those rules. So, we had a whole moment, but it was funny because eventually she's like, oh yeah, this does work that way, but I still fix it for my written outside of my own personal world for doing that. But really, who and how do I want to show up? If this is where I'm planted, who do I want to be? And how do I want to be? And what is my heart inviting me to be? Just the last episode, I gave you one of my favorite mantras that I actually work with every single day. What do I want to offer to my day? What do I want to offer to myself? What do I want to offer to others? That's me setting who and how I want to be each day. That came from this beautiful tree of live where you are planted. And so as we're coming into this equinox energy, it's inviting you to pause and bring these pauses in, not just to when the equinox is, but into everyday life. So I invite you to set this intention with me that I want to be more mindful of what I call threshold moments. Like these moments where we recognize that I'm moving from one space to the next. And why am I picking that place to put this practice into play is because those are the moments where we're in the in-between, right? Those are the moments when we can say, I'm about to be planted here. How do I want to show up in that place, right? It gets us ahead of the game so we can set that intention versus playing catch up, right? So sitting under that tree in that moment of spin out, I was playing catch up. I was like, hey, I'm planted here. I'm obviously not living here very well. Let me dive in. But if we can be a little proactive, if we can bring this into our intention setting, then the way that I show up, who and how I show up, where I'm being planted, now I can start to manifest from that place that really is in alignment with my heart. No matter what that room is that I'm quote walking into, whether it's something I like or I don't like, whether it's something that I get caught off guard in or just goes completely as planned, it doesn't matter what happens in that space because I've already rooted, I've already planted myself into me, into my heart, and into my desires. So one of the things I thought would be fun with this one is to bring in some Eden energy exercises based off of that 5-element system. And so you would think I'd be going to spleen or stomach, like stomach right under the eyes and doing some tapping, which we can do, or spleen right underneath the bra line for girls or the middle of the torso just on humans, which is, tappy, tappy, tappy. We could definitely bring that in. But I actually felt more guided to work with the control cycle between lung and liver. And it might sound slightly odd, but if you could imagine that Earth is coming in and inviting us into either in the southern hemisphere, metal, lung, or in the northern hemisphere, liver and gallbladder, which is metal, right? And so we want to work with these two because what actually happens is they can come together and find balance and then create balance in the whole cycle. So it's like if we can work on that control cycle, it actually kicks out into the whole shebang and helps us step into balance with who we are. So right on the stitch line of like if you were like a little doll and you were being put together is where lung one is. And again, we're not using needles, so we're using our hands. These are our tools, and we're going to rub them together, shake them off, invite beautiful Reiki energy to them. And we're just going to rub for a moment right on that line. And if it feels better to do like the butterfly, the more crossover patterns you can get in your system, the better. So just take a moment and breathe. We're talking to the lung. And again, if you want to tap, you can. I just ask that you explore tapping nice and slow instead of a phonetic tapping, because a phonetic kind of is going to bring like really like waking up energy and like a, oh, should we be nervous? Should we be scared? And we want the exact opposite. We want the exhale energy. So I personally like to just kind of massage and then soften. And as we're working with lung, it's inviting us to be in that present moment, whatever it is. Let go of that control, let go of what it should or shouldn't be, let go of like how much pieces of us love that moment and want it to last forever, and the parts of us that absolutely do not like this moment and want it to end and wish it never have existed in the first place, and everything in between. Additionally, whenever I give you exercises, please know that you can do them in your own way, in your own time. If they want to just massage and then let go, give yourself permission to do whatever your body wants to do. Even if you're like, but she hasn't moved yet, I'm working on a more general whole. Please honor your body. And so, what would be helpful for me to release in this moment so that I can live fully where I'm planted? Hmm. And then if you do have a journal, just write it down. Oh, anxiety, fear, nervousness, worry, judgments. So we're going to hold on to that judgment ones. And now we're going to go to actually the companion of liver and the wood energy, which is gallbladder. And we're going to use the neurolymphatics, which are right here underneath the collarbone, this big space right through here. If you come out from the center a little bit to the side, like a quarter line between here and there, or just place your hands up over that high heart area. Just kind of rub back and forth, and you can use your knuckles. They're usually a little sore if you haven't had a lot of energy work. And if it even feels good, like all of a sudden I want to keep going out some of those neurolymphatics. So I'm just riding right underneath the collarbone and I'm making little itty bitty circles with my knuckles all the way to that lung one point. And actually, we're gonna hook them all up. So my thumbs are on lung one and my hands are over those gallbladder. You're also getting kidney spirit points right now. So this is like really bang for your buck. Take a nice deep breath in. Just feel that. So what we're probably working with right now is fears, resentment, and judgments. What do I think I should be doing? How do I think I should be planted? What do I think other people think I should be doing in the spaces that I'm in, or where I'm about ready to go, or whatever creation I'm working on? What am I holding as a judge for myself? I'm going to open them up again. And again, give yourself permission to move. If you find yourself going, like I just found myself going to a different part, just let your hands move. If you find yourself wanting to stretch or shake or wiggle, 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 give yourself permission to move. Your body knows. It has an innate healer within it. If we let our body move, It's amazing what it can do. Trauma takes that away from us. Trauma says, don't move, don't stretch. Trauma says, stand still. Trauma says, who's looking right now, right? And so I'm also working with lung a little bit. That's off the edge of the thumbs. Now we're going to just do a little hookup. So, sorry. So I've got my hand on my solar plexus right above my belly button and a hand on the high heart. And I'm just inviting them to come together. So what would it look like if I released my shoulds and opened and said to my heart, that space in between this hookup, what if I could open to my own knowing, third chakra? What if I'm being asked to be in this space in a way that I couldn't even imagine? How do I want to show up and who do I want to be? Nice deep breath in and out. Kind of shake it off, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Now we're going to bring in liver. And so right underneath, in line with your chest, if you go down right underneath them, right above that bottom rib is your liver alarm points and ending points for liver, and it's usually pretty sore. Like mine, I am so surprised right now. Now, I don't like to tap on these points because they're usually a little sore, especially if you're working through a lot of inner judgments, a lot of like to-do lists, a lot of like almost shame and blame and guilt stuff that's happening, and you're feeling a little bogged down, a little toxic. These points are going to be sore. So what I like to do instead is just figure eight back and forth, right? I don't want to get flagged by the internet, so I'm not going to do this on my actual body, but just figure eight back and forth right underneath. Again, that chest area right above the floating ribs. Just allow yourself, if it's really sore, just hold. Big, nice open hand, inviting Reiki energy to just support it however is best for it. I'm not trying to make them not sore. I'm not trying to make them do anything. I'm just inviting them to talk to me. Tell me more. So for these points that are really sore for me, I'm asking, is it mine or is it the collective that I'm talking to right now through the podcast? And it's the more the collective. I'm getting a no to mine and a yes to the thing. And what you're watching me do with this finger is called sticky smooth muscle testing. And so when I'm in big spaces, I always kind of do that. I teach this in different things, and maybe I'll do a big podcast. If you want me to do a podcast on muscle testing or energy testing, let me know and in the comments, and I can do that. But right now, I'm going to stay on track. So just invite in, again, a softening. That to-do list is always going to be there. To say we're going to get rid of that to-do list is just wishful thinking. Instead, it's like, no, can I trust that I'm going to be guided as to what steps are mine? And then I love taking this one from Esther Hicks and bringing in her, what she calls the tablecloth thing, which is they were at a restaurant, her and her husband, and they were worried about all these things they had to do. The RV had broken down, everything else has happened, and they were like, how that is. And then Esther was sitting there and she started to channel Abraham, and she was like, hey, draw a line on a piece of paper, put your to-do list on one side and the universe on the other side. What do you think belongs on your to-do? And they were both making a huge list on one side, and Abraham came in and was like, no, move it over. Like, take almost 80% of what you think is on your to-do list for today and what is your responsibility to figure out or to do or yada, yada, yada. Move it over to the universe and let the universe move the things to you. And so they ended up with like 2 or 3 little things out of all these things they thought they needed to do on their side of the thing. And so that's that placemat or tabletop exercise that came from Esther Hicks and Abraham. And invite that in. And so I'm just bringing the energy of that, and I can already feel the shift that's happening. Like, oh, I'm not alone. There's more support to me internally through my own inner wisdom and externally through being guided of who is the appropriate person or being to ask for help and support with. right? Now we're going to come back up to gallbladder. Just give it some love. Take a nice deep breath in. We're catching lung at the same time. And so it is. So, the way you can bring this into practice as we move throughout the week is just take a moment and feel what has shifted in your body with just that pause. The pause of starting with lung. There's parts of me that are going to be upset, trying to control, maybe stuck in some grief and loss energy that I don't even have awareness of. And I'm going to invite my body just to give me a sensation check in. What's happening? Right? Coming over to gallbladder, kidney, releasing that fear, getting more curious about what is the should list? What are the resentments that I have about that list? And what do I think I should be doing, or other people judging me about what I should be doing? And again, that's what I think they're judging me as. Maybe I know, but most of the time it's what I think. Make that list. Release, liver. Really lean in with love and compassion to what I feel I should or should not be planted in, and how I should or should not be. And can I let those go? And instead, open to my heart and ask. Link it together with last week's episode, episode 31. I am planted here. How do I want to offer this next moment? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What are my intentions for that space? And help me to match that as I move into that space, because I've been planted there for a reason. And I want to be in connection with that space. I want to have my roots deeply in my own energy field. I want to be reaching up to invite that support in. And then I want to show up in that space as me. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we can offer to that space. Just one last little side note on this. I know it's kind of like all over the place, but it's kind of what happens every once in a while. It's like when we are conscious of how we are planted, of who we're planted in and what we're showing up as, ourselves or our trauma or our past, like what I figured out sitting underneath that oak tree, right? Like, oh, I was showing up, reading that space through my trauma goggles. And therefore, I wasn't getting a clean read. And therefore, I kept hitting wall after wall after wall that weren't real walls. And so when I went back in, planted in my heart, all of a sudden I could see clearly. It didn't change everything. It wasn't like, oh, everything came together. It's like, but the way I felt in that space, the way I was able to find myself, I was able to offer that to me. And what I found is as I offered that, it was contagious in a good way. And I could feel other people shedding the same trauma goggles, stepping into their own self. And was it all because of me that retreat shifted around for that second half? Maybe, maybe not. But I know that it was a part of it. It was a ripple that happened because I was willing to pick up that message from that tree and bring that energy back to the whole. Right? And then those that were searching for a way to land in themselves and their authentic selves were actually given permission to do that because my field was saying, hey, you want to join me? Right? Like, I'm not going to push it. You can do whatever you want to do, but I'd love for you to join me. And that's the beauty of this work, that this is why it's not selfish, that when we can break free from these old habits, these old stimuluses and response, and show up from our heart, the ripples are amazing and they're beautiful. So I hope that this practice kind of is not super formal, but a way of working with yourself and starting to see that when your hands are moving through your body, when you're feeling drawn to put a hand over here, there's a reason, and just give yourself permission. Even if you don't know what points you're touching and what they're up to and how they're working, just honor that, right? Let that voice shine and let this equinox energy come forward for you in a way that helps cultivate more balance and more ability to live fully where you were planted. So offering you light, love, and joy on your journey, Michelle Holling-Brooks. Thank you for listening to Soulful Practices. For more information on how to work directly with me or one of my guests, check out the show notes below. We'd love for you to also let us know what parts of this episode are speaking to you and how this practice is supporting you on your healing and spiritual journey. Please share this podcast with fellow seekers, travelers. Together, we can create a wave of soul-led beings in this world, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. Michelle Holling-Brooks. Until next time.